So y'all, I'm sitting here with Deegan Puchkors, artist extraordinaire, and the guy who single-handedly got me to actually pay attention to the artists at conventions. Deegan, how are you doing?
Good, man. That's a heck of an intro. I'm honored.
It's true. Like, I'm ashamed to admit that when I first started going to conventions, I didn't too much pay attention to the artists because, I mean, not that their art wasn't good or anything, but just nothing really caught my eye. You know, I wasn't really looking to put anything on the wall.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, walked past that Dark Phoenix print that you had, and I was like, shit, I need that one. I need that one.
Well, that's awesome.
I actually still have it on video. Like the original Huntsville video that I posted has the moment, like you can tell, because there's no audio, it's just music. But you can tell as I'm moving the camera, you see that print, and all of a sudden the camera just kind of stops and like moves like that.
Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. That's high praise. So I'm glad that I was able to kind of start that for you. So that's really cool.
Yeah. So let's start with, how long have you been creating art?
Yeah. So
and not just professionally, just period.
Definitely since I was, probably since I was 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I figured.
Yeah. It's been a long time. It's funny, like I started by scribbling in Disney storybooks.
Yep.
And so my mom was like so annoyed that I kept drawing in books I wasn't supposed to draw in that she finally got me a sketchbook, and that's it all kind of took off from there.
What kind of art do you create, and do you have a specialty?
Yeah, so I guess you would consider it, I do kind of just modern American comic art. And I specialize in doing comic book covers. So that's kind of like what I specialize in right now. Yeah, so that's like my main gig that I like to do the most. I used to do interiors, but I've just gotten to the point where I just get much more of a kick out of like trying to figure out what can I do on this cover to tell a little bit of the story and get somebody interested in wanting to pick it up, you know? Like, so I love that challenge.
Right. Are there any artists that have influenced your work, and how have they impacted your style?
Yeah, so big time. And I've said this in a few interviews, so I feel bad. I keep giving the same answer, but hands down, Mark Bagley. Mark Bagley is like my biggest influence. He's honestly the reason that I got into comic books. Like his art on Spider-Man and Venom was like what put it over the top for me, and I was like, I want to do that. And so yeah, it's funny. I get a lot of people at conventions that say your stuff kind of looks like Mark Bagley. And it's so funny because a lot of artists tend to get like offended when they get compared to another artist, but I'm like, people are comparing me to the guy that I like worship. So I'm like, that doesn't bother me at all. So I'm like, and I would never think that I'm even remotely like in that league. So I'm like, if people think that I look similar to somebody that I, respect that much, I'm like, that's super cool.
Have you ever like spoken to him or been in contact with him?
A few times, and he's really nice, and he's really funny too. Like he's got a great sense of humor, and he's super humble. Like when you try to tell him like, you're a big influence on me and stuff, like he almost doesn't like it. He's like, he's that humble. So yeah, he's really cool, and I've had a couple really great interactions with him since I started doing this like as a career. So it's been really good. I'm really happy that I can say that I met my hero and it went well, because sometimes it's not how it works.
All right, what is your process for creating a new piece of art? Like once you've gotten the concept in your head, how does it go? Yeah,
so basically I'll start with doing what we call thumbnailing, and it's basically where I do like a very small, rough version of the idea in my head, and I'll usually do 3 or 4 of those to try to map out and get an idea of like, okay, do I like this? Oh, I like that, but let me change it over to this and kind of mess with it. And that allows you to not focus too much on like details and stuff.
Right.
So I'll thumbnail it, and then depending on if I'm drawing traditionally or digitally, it kind of changes. If I'm doing digital, I can just then zoom in and blow it up, and then start like really like mapping it out better. And get more of the details and stuff in there. If I'm doing traditional, what I'll do is I'll take a scan of it, and then I'll blow it up and print it out. And then I'll use that rough layout to kind of like put behind my final piece, and I'll light box it. So then I'll start drawing over that initial sketch and like really figure it out that way. And then once I got it laid out and drawn and everything, then I'll render it, and I'll do my inking. And I usually ink digitally at this point. I do traditional inking too, especially on commissions, but when I do like my comic covers and stuff like that, I usually ink digitally, just because I'm OCD like crazy.
Same
and
here.
I love my line
Same
work
here.
being really clean and really crisp, and I'm just able to do that really well on digital. And then what I do is once that's all done, I'll send it off to my colorist that I work with. I work with a couple amazing colorists. One is James Affredi. He's incredible, and Gat Melvin. And I always shout them out because I don't think colorists get nearly enough respect, because they do an amazing job.
I mean, they look amazing.
Yeah, and it's
they look amazing.
Like, depending on the colorist that you get, it can totally change the look of a piece. So like, it really is a big part of the process. So yeah, once I'm done, I send it to one of them, and they do their thing, and then it's finished. So that's kind of like the way it works.
Now, how long does that normally take?
So for me, I'm incredibly slow. Like by comic book artist standards, like it's kind of ridiculous. Like I'm very on the slow end. I'm not a quick artist. I can't get over my own OCDs and my own perfectionism.
That's what I was about to say. It's probably just due to the OCD and perfectionism.
Like I always want every piece that I do to be the new best thing that I've ever done.
Right.
And when you do that, it ends up like I take time on things that you end up never noticing, because it's like I zoom back out or I get away from it, and I'm like, I just spent so much time doing that, and nobody's probably ever going to notice.
Right.
So on average, like stuff like this, that's like these big, bold, pinup images, those usually are anywhere between like 15 to 20 hours, from start to finish. And then with like my covers, I usually put a little bit more time into those to really flesh it out, and make sure that because with covers, what takes longer is there's much longer of an idea process.
Right.
Like I go through a lot more thumbnails to really nail down, I like this one. So those usually take me about 25 to 30 hours at times, just because I put way more prep into them.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So what's your favorite piece that you've done so far, and why?
So it's definitely this Venom piece that I did. That Venom is hands down my favorite character. I'm kind of giving it away by having him tattooed on me, but people always joke, they're like, do you like Venom? I'm like, yeah, a little bit. But so he's my favorite character. So about a year ago, I wanted to just make I call it my magnum opus Venom piece, where it was just the best Venom piece that I could put together.
Yeah.
And so I started working on that one, and I had this idea of I wanted to have a shot of him kind of catching a bad guy.
Yeah.
And it's basically right before the bad guy is about to have a bad time. And so I always loved that idea, and so I started mapping it out. And what makes this one even more special is I put a ton of work into it, and I think it's the best inking I've ever done. But then what was really cool was one of my favorite artists is Patrick Brown, and he does a lot of Marvel art. He does a lot of their marketing and packaging artwork. If you see a T-shirt, it's probably his art, stuff like that. And he's kind of a mentor of mine. I'm a part of his Patreon and his community, and he has kind of helped make me so much better, because he'll critique my work, he'll a lot of that stuff. And I asked him one day, I was like, I'm doing this Venom piece that I'm really proud of. Would you mind teaming up and you color it? Because I love his colors.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, that would be a blast. He was like, I don't get to, do other people's stuff very often. So he was amazing. He colored the piece, and I love his coloring style. So it came out exactly how I was hoping.
Right.
And so that's what makes it even more special to me, is that I got to work with this guy that I really look up to, and got to collaborate on it with him. So yeah, that's definitely hands down my favorite one for sure.
What do you feel is the biggest challenge you face as an artist, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Oh man. Do you mean with the art itself, or just being a professional artist in general?
I think, just being a professional artist is kind of more where I'm going with that question.
So, oh gosh. Honestly, I think I'm lucky enough to where almost 4 years into this, I'm getting to the point where last year was a huge year of growth for me. And I really expanded a ton, and it was almost overwhelming. I kind of got caught flat-footed by it. It was so much all at once that I was like, oh God, how do I handle all this?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, one of the hardest things has been adapting to when you have this idea, when you're like, I'm going to be a professional comic book artist, you think, and a lot of people think, oh, you're going to just draw all the time. And I'm like,
right.
I work pretty much 7 days a week because I'm really unhealthy and I have no boundaries with myself.
Right.
And so I work like 7 days a week, and out of that 7 days, I probably only get to do the drawing 3 days out of that 7 days. And so it's because the other 4 are doing all the other stuff that goes into making this happen and that goes into making this like sustainable. You know, so it's like emailing, responding
behind the
to
scenes
clients,
stuff.
yeah, like reaching out, trying to get cover work, setting up conventions, you know, applying to shows and getting hotels booked and travel. And it's like, that's been the biggest struggle, is like, I'm honestly to the point right now where I really need to get help. You know, like it's kind of to that point. I'm like, it's too much for one person at this point. So that's been the hardest thing to struggle with and get used to. But I'm just kind of like flying by the seat of my pants at this point. Like,
hey, you do what you got to do.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, for sure.
I saw a while back where you said that you had an interview with Marvel, or you showed them some of your artwork or something like that. Now, how did that go? Yeah,
so last year I was lucky enough, I got to do 2 portfolio reviews with them. One with the editor-in-chief, C.B. Sapolsky.
Yep.
So I got to sit down with him, and he looked through my portfolio and gave me, you know, good constructive criticism and stuff. And then that went really well. He really liked my stuff. He gave me really great advice and like stuff that I could do to improve. And then the next week, I was going to be at C2E2 in Chicago. And they were doing portfolio reviews there with their, basically he's the head of like talent relations,
right?
Ricky Purdon. And so CB Sapolsky was like, I'd really love for you to go and sit and have a conversation with him too, because he is much better at like kind of articulating the art side of it.
Right.
And so he had me go and do a portfolio review with him. And that went really well as well. And that was really cool. Both of them were just amazing because it was so eye-opening to get big names in the comic industry looking at my work and telling me what they think would bring it up another level. And so, yeah, that was awesome. So it went really well. Yeah, so they have a file on me now. So basically, every like 5 or 6 months, they have me email them whatever I've been working on lately.
Oh, okay.
And they kind of add it to my file. And so it's basically kind of like I'm hoping that one day, you know, they dig into the files and they're like, oh yeah, let's give this guy a shot.
Go down to that room in the basement where it's all dark and creepy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Some dude goes down there and it's like, oh, look, here's Deegan. I tell you what, let's work with him.
Yeah, hopefully that'll happen one day. So I'm like, and I just feel really lucky because, you know, not everybody gets to get those portfolio reviews.
Yeah.
So I'm like, even though it's not like I got a job right away and stuff, it's like, it's still really cool to me that I was able to get such good advice from these people that I really respect and that I hope to work for one day, you know? So it's such a good stepping stone, and it really allows me to kind of like refocus and be like, okay, cool. Like they gave me great stuff to work on. So now my goal is to work on that and get better at it so that the next time, if I get a chance to speak to them, hopefully I've, you know, gone up that level and taken into account everything that they said. So, yeah.
Now, where do you see yourself, or where do you hope to see yourself professionally in 5 years?
Oh gosh.
Marvel.
I know.
Marvel,
honestly,
call this man.
Honestly, that's my biggest thing. That's my dream. Like if I always tell people, I'm like, if I could do one Venom cover officially for Marvel or Spider-Man, I could die the next day. Like I seriously, like if I did one, I'd be like, I'm good now. And then I'm just like, anything that happens
ready to come
after
home.
that. Well, yeah, anything that happens after that point, I'm like, cool. You know, so like that's where I hope to be. I really, you know, because it's funny, a lot of people, especially in like indie comics and, you know, smaller artists nowadays, really talk about like wanting to do their own thing and wanting to have their own characters and write their own stories. And I'm super passionate about that too. I have some of that stuff in the works that I hope to talk about soon. But like, I just grew up on these characters. I grew up on loving these characters, and I want to get to put my small little stamp on that. You know, it'd be such a cool thing to get to be a part of that amazing history, you know. And again, you know, even if it's one cover, that's something that I'll always get to say is that I got to do that, you know. So that's where I hope I'm at. So God willing, you know, hopefully.
Well, y'all, I'm going to put Deegan's contact information and I think his link tree, his Etsy shop, all that stuff in the description below. Deegan, thank you so much for talking to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your time.
It's
Thanks
always
for having
nice to see you, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up 3 prints myself. So we'll see y'all later.
Thank you, guys.